Ladies and gentlemen, as we begin our services, if we can please kindly turn off all cell phones or electronic devices, or please place them on silent. Thank you. I've learned that in times of separation and loss and sorrow, the Psalms can bring much comfort and solace. In this spirit, I now recite from the 23rd Psalm, this great Psalm of faith. And these words remind us that even when we feel alone or lonely, we are never truly alone. For God is with us, and God is with Elliot, with your pop-up. If you are familiar with these verses, you could join with me. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. I would like to continue with a modern-day poem which we read at our synagogue at Temple Emmanuel from time to time, and especially during the High Holy Days. But I'd like to personalize it for Elliot, Elle, Uncle Elliot, all those names. At the rising of the sun and at its going down, we will remember Elliot. At the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, we will remember him. At the opening of the buds and in the rebirth of spring, we will remember him. At the blueness of the skies and in the warmth of summer, we will remember your pop-up. At the rustling of the leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we will remember him. At the beginning of the year, and when it ends, we will remember Elle. As long as we live, he too will live, for he is now a part of us as we remember him. When we are weary and in need of strength, when we are lost and sick at heart, when we have joy we crave to share, when we have decisions that are difficult to make, When we have achievements that are based on his, we will remember him. As long as we live, he too will live, for he is now a part of us as we remember him. We will most definitely remember Elliot. Elliot L. was memorable. He was unique. He was one of a kind, engaging, outgoing, and very much his own person. First, there was the matter of his name, Elliot. He actually was not very fond of that name, and that is why he was known as Markoe L., Uncle Elliot, Top. Is that right, Top? That's a military term. Truly, our shared loss is difficult and sad and profound. Because Elliot was such a constant and a positive presence in your lives, and he was larger than life. As you know, Elliot was big, he was loud, he was powerful, but he had a huge, caring, and loving heart. He loved people. People were just drawn to him. And everyone loved him. He was a terrific storyteller. And he would tell the same stories over and over again. So I was thinking, if there's one word, if you could find one word to describe him, I think that word would be proud. He was so proud of his military service, and he was so proud of all of you, his family. Elliot enlisted in the United States Army when he was a senior in high school. He served as an MP and specialized in law enforcement. At one point, his assignment was to escort prisoners to Leavenworth. He dedicated 20 years of his life to serving our country, and he earned a Purple Heart. And even though he had a strong mind and a strong body and a strong spirit, he was terrified of snakes. Go figure. When it came to his family, Markoe was your rock. He was your protector. That's your words. He had your back, and he was always there for you. He was always ready to offer assistance, to show care and concern. Indeed, the greatest joy in life is to be able to say, I still have something to do. I want to accomplish yet more. And so he did. He kept on reaching and climbing and giving and hoping. We realized how much Elliot taught all of us by the example of his good deeds. Elliot was a brilliant man. He was an avid reader, a war history buff. He had 421 books on his Nook. That must be some sort of a world's record or something like that. He was a Philly sports fan. He loved the Eagles. He was very content to watch the games alone, all by himself. However, he tolerated his mother sitting next to him during the games and asking a million questions. That's really a loyal son. You may not know this, but Elliot was personally responsible for every Eagles win. He also liked golf and cooking, music, and especially up on the roof by the, you have to guess, by the drifters, yeah. And he would count the days to Crab Day. This means something special to the family. There was this one day in late August. It was Crab Day. I don't know much about it, except I was never invited. But there's a whole ritual involved with this. Preparation, garlic, olive oil, celery, secret ingredients, whatever. Most of all, he loved you, his family, and he would do anything for you, and you for him. However, one cannot speak of Elliot alone without also speaking of you, Lee, his devoted and loving wife of 55 years. You first met in Germany, where he was stationed. And over your many years together, you celebrated so many joyous occasions together, and also dealt with a few challenging times. But in the process, you evolved into a real team, a true partnership. And you were always together, right? So I can't even begin to imagine how much you will miss your life's partner. And how your dad loved you, Michelle, Misha, Tina and Jim, Stephanie, and the late Stephen and Rachel, who died early on in infancy. And that was a wound that never really healed. The grandkids, I mean, you were the light of your pop-up's eyes. And he took pride in each one of you, and he rejoiced in every one of your accomplishments. I'm going to name all of you. Mo, Zane, Maya, Josh, Seth, Sienna, Michael, Kate, Jimmy. I got that, everyone? Okay. So 2 stories. One I know about because I was involved, and one I just learned about. But so Seth had already turned 13, or was about to turn 13, and so Elliot he wanted you to have a bar mitzvah. More than you wanted to have a bar mitzvah. But I remember you sitting in my study, and I said, you can have a bar mitzvah at any, wherever, but you have to do your part. There's going to be a lot of catch-up involved, and we're going to do our part. And you had your bar mitzvah. And he made that happen. He really did. And you'll never forget it. And I know that recently Mo and Zane and Maya, he was so encouraging of you, and he admired your devotion, your dedication in carrying out Ramadan. That was him. That was his character. He believed in all of you. He loved you for who you are. And he certainly believed in women. He was like early on, women's rights, before we even had that conversation. He believed that women are capable of anything and everything, and probably are brighter than men. And Elliot was so very close to his brothers and sisters and your families, Beth and Drew and Pat and Jonathan and Rhonda and Paya and Colin, and your families who are here. However, I feel that one can best understand and appreciate a person by the way in which one copes with adversity and disappointment and setback and loss. And over the last 3 years, Elliot has been in and out of hospitals and rehab facilities. And even though it was a very tough road for him and for all of you, he remained so positive. He never questioned, why me? Why is this happening to me? In his own words, I just want to get better for all of you. Thinking of all of you first. And he never stopped hoping, but it was not meant to be. But Uncle Elliot, will live on in you and through all of your sacred stories and precious memories. He was loved in turn. That's so obvious today. And we know that this love has not ended with his passing. For as long as we live, he too will live, for he is now a part of us as we remember him. And to keep those memories going, I am going to call on Beth. Some of your brothers and sisters come up with you too. That's right. Oh, good. All right.
Thank you, Rabbi David, for painting a beautiful picture of the man that is Elliot Markoe. On behalf of our whole family, I would like to share some funny and poignant stories to help illustrate what it was like to be within Elliot's protective walls. Elliot was a fierce protector and everyone's champion. I cannot emphasize enough the word fierce, as he would quickly swoop to where most people would be afraid to go, with an unyielding mission to rectify any perceived danger that presented itself. And when doing so, he never thought of himself or the peril he might face to protect those in his life. Knowing Elliot was always there to protect our family gave us a sense of confidence that we could do anything. And because of this, any kind of fear or trepidation we may have felt quickly transformed into self-assurance and courage. Whether it was fighting for your beliefs, speaking your mind, or facing uncertainty, knowing someone was there to have our backs, literally and figuratively, was a truly immeasurable gift. In addition to being fierce and many other wonderful things, Elliot was a brilliant storyteller. So I'd like to share some stories that capture the essence of his effectiveness. Thank you. I'm so glad they're behind me. Capture the essence of his protectiveness. And while these stories are mostly from my perspective as his sister, they represent the way he protected all his loved ones. His wife, his daughters, grandchildren, siblings, nieces and nephews, and our parents when they were still with us. One morning when I was a young child, about 5 or 6, and Elliot was 12 or 13, and if you're doing the math, Elliot was 7 years older than me, Our mother made oatmeal for breakfast, and before leaving the house, instructed our father to make sure I ate the oatmeal. Let me just say, I hate oatmeal. I hated it then. I hate it now. Now picture the scene. I'm sitting at the kitchen table with 2 cheeks full of oatmeal in my mouth, tears streaming down my face as my father sternly told me I must eat my oatmeal. As most parents do, he resorted to telling me about starving kids in parts of the world I had never even heard of. A few minutes into my father's lecture, Elliot came bouncing down the stairs into the kitchen, quickly assessed the situation, and then proceeded to interrupt my father and say, "Dad, look at her. She clearly doesn't like oatmeal. Why are you making her eat it?" With that very logical and protective comment, my father shrugged his shoulders and said, "Well, if she doesn't like it, she doesn't have to eat it." In that moment, a hero was born in my eyes. When Elliot was in the Army and stationed at Fort Dix, it was common practice for his family to bring him lunch at the base. One day, Michelle, a very cute 16-year-old, I must say, rode on her moped to deliver his lunch. Elliot was outside with his troops doing maneuvers when he saw Michelle approaching. He instantly yelled, "About face," so that his troops would not see his cute daughter, grabbed his lunch, waved Michelle on her way, and then yelled, about face again, his troops none the wiser. We will never know if a superior officer was observing maneuvers that day, but we are pretty sure that that extra about face was not in the training practices. Elliot was very strong and intimidating. Most people did not want to mess with him, but he was also very unassuming and never started any trouble. However, his protective nature was always laying dormant and ready to come out when needed. One weekend when he was golfing with our brother Drew and 2 other men, a standing foursome for many years, the foursome behind them kept hitting their balls into their game. This started to make one of Elliot and Drew's golfing buddies very angry, and so he wanted to confront the other golfers. You might say this golfing buddy was a little bit more talk than action, because when the other 4 golfers came around and were finally in sight, they saw that there was 1 little guy and 3 big guys. So the golf buddy said, "Look, I'll take the little guy." And without missing a beat, Elliot said, "Okay, I got the other 3." It seems that, unbeknownst to all of us, Elliot had a medical degree, because whenever anyone was sick and had to have a procedure or surgery, Elliot always assured us we would be okay, and he always was there with us in the hospital. A few years ago, when Pia was having major surgery and had to be at the hospital at the crack of dawn, she was greeted by our big brother, who was already perched in the surgical waiting room so that he could keep a watchful eye. When Jonathan was hobbling into the hospital to have Achilles tendon surgery, Elliot was waiting for him in the parking lot so that he could help him get into the surgical center. Once, when our mother was sick in the hospital and needed some tests, she was not happy with the way the technicians kept jostling her. When the tests were over, she called me on the phone and demanded to get Elliot down to the hospital immediately, because she had informed the technicians that her oldest son was coming to make sure they treated her better. But perhaps the most telling example of Elliot's love and protectiveness was when our brother Drew was having life-threatening heart surgery. As we sat in the waiting room, Elliot turned to Jonathan, Pia, and me and said, "I should be in there on that operating table, not Drew." I will end with the moral of this story. As young children, we often have heroes we try to emulate, like sports figures or celebrities. Jonathan, who is 16 years younger than Elliot, was quite the athlete, always playing baseball, football, and basketball. When he was in elementary school and he and his friends were sitting around talking about their sports heroes, when it was time for Jonathan to share his, he said, "I don't need to look at sports figures to find my hero, because my hero is my older brother, Elliot." I know he was speaking for all of us when he said that. We love you, Elliot, and we couldn't have invented a better big brother. Rest in peace with your family in heaven. We will miss you forever.
I'd like to include this poem. I'd like to read it as if Elliot would be responding, and especially to Beth's words. His message to all of us. Don't grieve for me, for now I'm free. I'm following the path God laid for me. I took God's hand when I heard God call. I turned my back and left it all. I could not stay another day to laugh, to love, to work or play. Tasks left undone must stay that way. I found that place at the close of day. If my parting has left a void, then fill it with remembered joy. A friendship shared, a laugh, a kiss. Ah, yes, these things I too will miss. Be not burdened with times of sorrow. I wish you the sunshine of tomorrow. My life's been full. I savored much. Good friends, good times, a loved one's touch. Perhaps my time seemed all too brief. Don't lengthen it now with undue grief. Lift up your heart and share with me. God wanted me now. God set me free. Let us all rise. And I am going to recite the El Mole Rachamim prayer, which has Elliot's Hebrew name, Yitzhak ben Shlomo Pesach, Lebela Gittel. El Mole Rachamim, Shokein Ba'am Romim, Chametzei Menucha Nachona Tachat Kanfei Hashchina, L'nishmat Yitzhak ben Shlomo Pesach Lebela Gittel. Shechalach L'olamo. Ba'al harachamim Yitzror Bitzror Hachayim et Nishmato. Adonai hu nachalato v'yanuach b'shalom al mishkavo v'nomar Amen. I always look at a Hebrew name, and it's interesting how we fulfill our names. So Yitzhak literally means to laugh. I mean, it was the patriarch Isaac, but it means to laugh. Shlomo means peace. It's from peace. Pesach, there are very few names that are named after a holiday, often when you're born at that time of year. Was that the case? No. But often. Oh, close enough. Sometimes it falls in there. And then, yeah. Gittel is like joy. So they're all like positive, happy names. O God, full of compassion, thou who dwellest on high, grant perfect rest unto the soul of Elliot, Pop, Uncle Elliot, Markoe, Top, who has departed from this world. Lord of mercy, bring him into your presence and let his soul be bound up in the bond of eternal life. Be thou his possession, and may he rest in peace. Amen. And you may be seated. the service at the cemetery, the family will be returning to Beth's home, which is 1508 Dogwood Drive in Cherry Hill. They will be observing Shiva for the remainder of the day, and there is a Shiva minyan at 7:30 p.m. And that would be your opportunity to tell your own stories and memories of Elliot.
I'm going to ask the pallbearers to please step to the center aisle. And I'll ask if we can rise once more, please. Be seated, please. I'll ask you to kindly remain seated, please, just for a moment. Folks in these rows, but can we start to move to our cars, please?
Right up the side out. Right up on the side out, please. Right up the side out. Right up on the side out.
Sorry, Jack, I'm just waiting. Pretty lucky to sit the whole. Even that Gary here.